Mission fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your all's dumb nullsec war snuffed out #1. Anunnaki Keepstar is next, and then come on.
There, then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive bombed a Megatron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
the reason that this keep started and get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
Hell.
Hi, sick.
I can
People
tell you very
overreacting.
clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. Like,
White daddy.
Good evening. Welcome back after a brief couple of weeks away. This obviously means that everybody is perfectly rested, and it means that everybody can, behave essentially like some kind of Superman forever after this, because obviously we spent those 2 weeks just catching up on sleep for the entire time. Except that's not true, I suppose, because we've just had the Charity Cup tournament. Now, hold on, somebody quickly tell me before I introduce you all. Is this the first Charity Cup? I know that there have been cups that have had a charity that they were supporting before, but go on, sorry.
So the history of this is that this was originally billed as the second Captain's Cup, which is a 6v6 tournament run by Jintan, who is running late, shockingly. However, for this second iteration, he decided that he wanted to raise money for a charity cause close to his heart. And with the CC2, it was very easy to pivot it into Charity Cup 2 as opposed to Captain's Cup.
Yeah, you don't need to change any of the graphics or anything. Easy.
All you need is a different logo with a different word in it, yeah.
You've got, for everybody who's tuned in, that is the voice of Dirk Stetille, who has been one of the key members of the behind the scenes. And hold on, you were also you also had your voice on the show as well. You were doing analysis as well.
Right, so yeah, my tournament history, if I'm going to do a quick spiel. I started out in tournaments by being part of the Goon Swarm team as a basic member in the before times. That it was 16, I think, maybe 17. This was before the CCP hiatus. I then, after the CCP hiatus, took over the Goon Swarm team, going into the Alliance Open, and then the Alliance tournaments from there. I've also been running the Anger Games with Sothrasil for the last few years since the hiatus as well. And in this particular event, yes, I was running the former Relv Desidents team, and also doing some of the arena streaming for the second arena, and doing some casting couch stuff in between my team responsibilities.
Don't call it a casting
we were doing
couch.
that, yeah.
Don't call it a casting couch, Dirk.
Let him if he wants to do that.
I can't.
Dirk is not the only member of the team that's worked on this, who was participating and doing work behind the scenes at the same time. But we got couple more behind the scenes people here. We got Rose. Rose, you have been the face of not the casting couch, of the analysis of them. You've put that in my head now, of the analysis, and you're there weekend after weekend for that, being the sort of anchor for all of the action going on. How did you find that? I think you've got your mic muted on Discord.
Muted. Muterator hits even outside the tournament.
The muterator. Well, okay. Other than the muterator striking
that
me,
was deliberate. That's just a taster of the
course.
casting.
Of course. But as this kind of being my first tournament, in the thing I've helped with internal scrimmages a little bit, done some honor brawls, done stuff like that, but I haven't actually stepped into the world yet before this. So, honestly, it was fun, and as somebody who has all of the time, I was like, look, if you need somebody, uh, throw me in, coach. I will sink or swim and just have fun and try to make a good experience out of it for everybody and go from there. So it was a great time, and I hopefully potentially look forward to doing more.
You
I know
did
that
swim admirably.
I know that that there's a lot of positions that they needed. There's a lot of positions that they need to fill for organizing this thing. In front of the camera, behind the camera, things like that. And they're grateful for anybody. But I was watching most of the weekends, and so I know that they're definitely going to really want you back for that there, because you turned up, you did it, and it was good. But
I will question on the good because I was my hands were sweating the entire time.
Now, we also have with us CCP Zelus, who I think that we can probably define as being the person behind the scenes on this one here. I mean, obviously, for just in case some people don't know, a tournament like this takes place on and people practice on the Thunderdome server, which is not a generally available server.
Go.
Go ahead. So what do you need to see from an organizer for like Jintan to convince you to put all of this work in?
I mean, some degree of a plan is always a good step. It's one thing just to say, hey, I want to run a tournament. Everyone has fantastic ideas for running tournaments, but then it's actually running through with like, hey, now I've got some rules. Hey, now I've got some points. Hey, and now I've got some rough idea in terms of when I want to broadcast it. Hey, I've got some people to help out with it. Okay, right. Well, let's now start, planning dates. And obviously the actual tournament tool element sides of it, which we'll probably go on a little bit later, is making sure that we've got an engineer that's actually programmed the tool to be able to run the tournament to the specifics of the whatever the rule set is. There's obviously a degree of admin side of it, so handling of the bans and so on and so forth, and then there's the actual engineering side of rule checking, so having a tool to check people's pods to make sure they're not running implants on and that kind of stuff.
And it's there's a lot of people. In fact, there are hundreds of thousands of people playing EVE Online who have a detailed plan in their head for how they're going to carry out whatever it is they want to achieve in this game. But that alone is not quite enough to actually run an event like this, is it? You want people to be able to. You want to be able to trust the people that they actually have the effort inside them to carry this out all the way through to the end, rather than getting bored partway through.
It is a huge undertaking.
Have you ever gone part way into organization for a tournament after thinking somebody has a good idea and a plan, only for it to fall apart? I'm not going to ask for names, but
it's never really reached the fall apart stage. There's always this when you're having the discussion of what do you want as the rules, and then they come to realize, okay, hang on a minute, there's a lot more involved here than I thought. Maybe I'll do this at a later time when I've actually thought this out a little bit more, is generally what happens a lot of the time. I think I'm not saying this is specifically for Jin's example, but like Jin's tournament, he actually consulted a lot of previous tournament captains to get general inputs into what they would like to see for a rule set. So I think there's always that going out there, thinking about it a little bit more and coming back. So it's never really, I think, part and parcel of that process of getting people to actually talk about what they want as the rules usually is the first step of have you got a rule set that actually works? When we did the first Captain's Cup, we actually did quite a lot of back and forwards in terms of discussion between Jin and I in terms of what the points should even look like in terms of the way he was doing his brackets, just to make it kind of add up to 100 as it was back then, but then it kind of obviously adjusted a little bit over time. But generally, no, it's never really fallen apart because we just have those talks beforehand to make sure it doesn't really.
That's great. It was a little bit different. It wasn't a straight up points spending style set of rules for this one here. I'm not a serial tournament watcher myself. I will watch some of the Alliance tournament. I will watch some of the Captain's Cup, and in this time the Charity Cup. But you know, as sort of people on the inside on this, do you feel like I suppose every single one of these tournaments is a learning process for things you might tweak for next time. Are there any aspects of this tournament and the rules for this one that you think it's been good this time, but let's have it different next time? Is there anything in particular that you felt? I might perhaps highlight the fact that this tournament had a lot of mirror matches this time round, which might suggest that there was a single best build template.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
Go
on then. No, you go first, mate.
You have the theory crafting down to a T. You were participating. Go for it. I'll chuck in my 2 cents afterwards.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say down to a T, quite frankly. But we made it through to the main event, but we did get knocked out pretty quickly after that. So, there's questions to be asked there. But one of the things that really needs to be recognized with this tournament format compared to your Alliance tournament or your Anger Games format is that this is a 6v6 tournament, but every one of those 6 ships, you have to have one ship from within a particular position. So for this one, you had a T1 battleship up at the top, followed by a Navy or a Tech 1 battle cruiser without mind links. Then in the third slot, there was Heavy Interdictor, Pirate, Navy, or T1 Ewar cruisers. So you're talking about like the Onyx, or the Orthrus, or an Osprey Navy issue, or a Blackbird in that slot, those kinds of ships. Then you had either a T1 logistics cruiser or a T2 logistics frigate in the 4th slot, a T3 destroyer, an interdictor, a command destroyer, or a faction destroyer in the 5th slot, and then the 6th slot, assault frigates, interceptors, EAFs, and T1 electronic warfare frigates, or a pirate frigate. So, like, this is a very restrictive sort of format. And I don't say restrictive as a negative term, but it is a very specific format that is looking to balance each side such that you don't see a like fly killer, very kitey Alliance tournament setup going up against a setup that has 2 battleships that are very tanky and a lot of support around that, and suddenly the kitey comp doesn't really have a chance against the tanky comp because the tank just can outlast the DPS and whittle them down. It wants to be on that sort of more fair playing field. However, I would say if there was one thing that I were going to pick to say this was a little bit unbalanced one way or another, I would say that the way the points are set up for this, because this system does still run on that 100-point setup that you mentioned already. And every position has a certain points value. So a battleship is worth 22 points, a battle cruiser is worth 21, the cruiser slot is worth 19, the logistics slot is worth 18, and so on. And that's really where I would say if it were me, I would focus next time, is kind of broadening out the differentiation between each slot, such that if you are a battleship trying to go up against, for example, a cruiser and a frigate, you have more options to try and still play that out towards the end of a match. That said, I think the fact that we saw a lot of mirror matches does just come from the sake of this trying to be a more balanced tournament with
Mm.
more restrictive boundaries, I think it gave newer teams a bit more of an easy in than the Alliance tournament will, for sure. Because you have this very prescriptive kind of format that you can follow, and even if it's not great, it might not be completely awful going up against a mid-tier team. So, like, there's two sides to this conversation for sure, but while there are things I would change, I think it was a very solid format and produced actually some really, really entertaining matches.
I will say that, you know, I realised that me sort of, you know, bringing up that there are a lot of mirror matches sounded a little harsh to begin with, but I would like to point out that I really appreciate seeing a tournament with a different meta for a change. You know, like the Alliance tournament, the rules change a little over time, a little bit each time to just do gentle tweaks to it. I think that it's because, you know, I was also part of one of the teams taking part in this one here. It was really nice to see a set of rules that is different to the Alliance tournament. So you're not just rehashing what you did 6 months ago, you know. And it's also really nice to see a tournament with a much more limited number of players per team, because that really opened it up for us to be able to take part at all. If this had been a 10v10, we simply wouldn't have been able to take part in this tournament. And, you know,
What team were you on? I was watching all the games.
I mean, I know that that's a genuine question, but that sounds like such a diss, Redline.
No, I didn't see your name. Like, if I would have known you were playing, I would have watched more closely for you, and, you know, put all my points on the team you were playing against. But
you'd have done very well.
Apparently, yeah. But apparently, you won't say the name of the team. I'm confused.
I was on the team called Submissive and Booshable.
Oh
my.
That was you.
There you
Okay.
go.
Gotcha.
I
All
mean,
right.
that was me.
Nothing.
Anyway, listen, that's not the point. I was fortunate.
No judgment here.
I was fortunate enough during this tournament to be able to see a little bit behind the curtain. I was given a few slots to do some of the match commentary on, and at that stage, it really means that I get to hear all of the in between during the adverts between matches, get to hear everything going on behind the scenes. And as an outsider, it's an astronomical amount of effort going on that the viewers simply cannot see, and that the participants are not seeing as well. They get teleported, they get checked. What other things kind of go on behind the scenes that you think that the average viewer out there might not be realize is going on? And that's to any of you, really.
I would say,
Any takers?
if I can, I would say, oh, yeah, there we go. I'm not muted. No mute.
No,
No,
no
no dog.
Muted, yeah.
Now I did it.
Yeah.
No, I had a
Dog.
somebody
Have a
wanted to say hi, and it's not their turn.
Hello, puppy. It is their turn.
But
Bring the dog back.
So it's their turn. Okay, Lise. Bring dog. Okay, that's as close as she'll get. But no. So the behind the scenes, especially for doing an all day of sitting and talking, and having to have the matches. The matches are so quick. We maybe have 3-5 minutes in between matches, and we have a text channel in the back that is, this is what we noticed, throw me this point. This is what we noticed, throw me this point. And we may not get through all the points, because that in between matches kind of can either be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, it can be 20 minutes. It can be a time frame, and yeah.
I didn't want to cut you off there, Rose, but I did want to say that you did fall somewhat into the trap of a Sothrasil event there.
Oh, did I?
You have to describe for the viewers what a Sothrasil event is.
Describe it for me too. What do you mean?
Right. So
same. I don't know what it means.
There is a there's a difference between the Alliance tournament and the way the Alliance tournament works for broadcast timings, and Zelus can speak to this more. But when we are actually sort of there's a period in tournament planning as an organizer, and it's worth noting that while you see potentially 3 or 4 weekends of a tournament event, these organizational conversations are starting 2, 3, 4 months before we go live, and potentially as much as 2 or 3 months, but even before Thunderdome opens in some cases. So there's a conversation that is had about the match formats and how quickly matches are going to run. Are you going to run multiple arenas at the same time, which is something that we did for Anger Games, and we've done for the Charity Cup here too. And if you're running multiple arenas, generally you will find that those arenas are offset by a certain amount. So one match will start, and then about halfway through your broadcast window, the second match will start in the second arena, and you'll be alternating between the two. And when Sothrasil and I run events, and Sothrasil got heavily involved in some of the scheduling here, what we try and do is have a 15-minute window in which there's, if the match is 10 minutes, we did this for Anger Game 7 where the match times were 7 minutes with a 3-minute overtime, which takes you to a total of 10. But if your match time is 10 minutes, you then have 5 minutes scheduled after that for broadcast work, and then another 10 minutes for a match, so you can fit 4 matches into a single hour of the broadcast. And this allows you to kind of compress the amount of time that teams need to be around and kind of help you manage some of those time zone questions a little bit more. But it does then mean that you run into like Rose's conversation of some matches go really quickly and you get like 8 minutes on the desk to really talk and dig in on a topic. And then some matches take 10 minutes, and then you've got a 30-second handover where there's an advert so that you can make sure that the talking points are correct. Like you were saying, Phantomite, you hear that back and forth real quick from the producer to say, hey, this is how long we've got, this is what we want to say. And then you've got 4 minutes to talk about what happened in the last match, the bans for the next match, what you think is going to happen in the next match, and then suddenly you're throwing it to the next match. And it happens that quickly. So, Zelus could talk a bit more about the broadcasting schedule for the AT, but Rose did walk into a Sothrasil special.
Yeah, it was very much throw into the fire and don't burn and swim, and having to get used to okay, we have 5 minutes, you have time for 1 point or 2 TLDR points and maybe bans, and maybe we get predictions, and just trying to keep everything together and having it in writing in a production only channel honestly was such a lifesaver for the behind the scenes as somebody who's new to this. And I made the joke, hey, I can't read everybody's minds, and I wish this would be the point where like it would absolutely come in handy to have that superpower. But no, it was absolutely a lifesaver, that channel.
One thing important.
Are you listening to them, Phantomite? Are you listening to them? How important it is to have a backstage channel where to keep things organized? Are you listening to how important that is, huh? Just making sure.
So, obviously, in a tournament like this, these the teams are not alliances as such. They are just teams of mates, and often they are all part of an alliance together. And they essentially get to come up with a brand new team name that they may only use just for this one tournament. Have you ever had a situation where you have felt a team name you wish they had chosen something else? Oh, just nodding all round.
I have actually turned around. There has been a couple in the past where I've just said, "You've submitted that to the tournament organizer, but I'm sorry, no, you're not having that name. Please pick a new one." I'm not going to say what they were,
No,
but it
you
has
can't
happened.
because they were unbroadcastable, right?
Yep. They just they were just sometimes they were funny, but just in poor taste. So it's just no. But yeah, some of them are pretty good though. I'm not gonna lie.
There's been a couple where we've talked to people before it even got to like telling Zelus, "Hey, this is our team list and these are the rosters." We've had to go and say like, "Hey, look, we appreciate what you're trying to do here, but no, we can't put this on CCP's channel." And that is a concern, right? When you're talking about a broadcastable event, you have to have a certain level of
now,
hey, we're here representing kind of thing.
Aside from being perhaps an inappropriate or perhaps even borderline or outright offensive name, a number of people involved with this tournament over the last few weeks have had a lot of fun trying to pronounce some of the names as well.
The German railgun team?
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my head.
Former Relv Desidents. Team names like this. Do you practice any of these beforehand? I mean, Rose, you have been on camera a lot on here, and you got a lot of these names right? So
Did I?
Do you have a kind of list? Yeah, do you kind of have a list, and you're trying to read it to sound it out first?
I'm gonna be honest, nope. I kind of looked at it and went, "We're winging this," and I kind of just said, "We're gonna Leroy Jenkins and just try it." And it was like, you know what? I would rather at least have fun attempting to try it than have to practice and get it right and make everybody laugh and go, "Hey, at least you gave it a shot." So the former Relv Decedence was one that I kept getting tongue twisted on. And then of course Magna Schengeschots, which I still cannot pronounce correctly, is will and always be one that I'm
could
going
be
to look
perfect
at
for all I know.
Magnetschinen geschützt.
I'm sorry?
But yeah.
See, I knew I was missing an E.
There we go.
Say that one more time.
Magnetschinen geschützt.
It just sounds like you show it with your teeth together.
Yeah, it really does.
I wouldn't have even had tried.
But yes, there is a reason that team was at one point in the Angry Games. They've kept their chosen name through a number of tournaments at this point. And when they first showed it at the Angry Games, we specifically went, right, that name means railgun, basically. That's just what the word means. So, you know what? For anybody who doesn't want to try their hand in German, this is what they will be called. They did get slightly annoyed at us for that, but it did stick. I will say
they got mad that they were called the German railgun team.
They got annoyed. They got annoyed mostly because they're not German.
Not really German, yeah.
Poor babies. The poor things. I feel so bad for them.
But they did get one of the best Anger Games moments I think we've ever had, which was an introduction to we sent it to the arena, and CCP Overload, also known as CCP Confirmed, was one of the casters for the match. And he did an entire 30-second introduction in fluent German just for this team.
I remember that.
Really German.
It was good.
And it was really good.
German can't be bad.
And I remember that the person he was doing the commentary with was like, "What?
I don't know what just happened." Yeah. But
have I walked into the wrong Discord?
Yeah.
But it was really good, and it was a really funny way to start the broadcast for the match.
There were some great names though. Like I do like the teams that enter multiple tournaments but do variants on their names, and it still catches me out every time. Like I got asked during our Live to Feed stream on Friday, like who was the final two teams during the tournament, and it was like Rage Quit, no Rage Sub, no Rage Quit, cancel sub, no Rage Sub, cancel quit, because they just keep doing variants of their name, and it gets me every time.
I mean, are there any rules in this kind of a tournament setting against name impersonation?
Technically, no.
You mean it's on a more casual basis rather than written down? Like somebody
Yeah.
couldn't, like somebody who couldn't just call themselves Goonfleet in this one.
Well, they probably could, and given
But
that
why would
given that the Goon team
mean-
called ourselves former Relv Dissidents, and it is worth noting, Rose, that the entire reason we picked that is because in a team meeting we were discussing what team names we could possibly get, and somebody did misspeak former Delve residents, and they said former Relv Dissidents, and then tried to correct themselves,
God.
and we were like, no, the first one is funnier,
Nope.
and it's absolutely going to catch people out. But I
Well,
think it would
the
probably...
only way that I would think. Yeah, the only way that I would think that you would get a goon fleet would be if it'd be all of the retirees coming back and coming from WAF, but
No, even then,
I'm much more a fan of
like,
former Relv Dissidents.
the Goon Fleet thing has been very detached from Goon Swarm for a very long time, so that's very much sort of an imitation meme on Tranquility nowadays, right? But
yeah,
in the tournament sort of scene, it would probably all of the team names get published as part of the tournament process. Like, here are all the teams that signed up. And so if a team turned around and said, hey, I think they're imitating us with their name, and came to an organizer and said, look, I want to have a conversation about this, there would probably be a conversation about it, and whether or not a decision would be made would kind of have to be on the basis of the merits of the argument and how close the team names are, that kind of thing. I wouldn't necessarily say that Soth and I would or wouldn't do it for the Anger Games. It's very circumstantial. Zelus would probably feel the same way about alliances coming in, Zelus.
Yeah, I mean, for the AT, we actually have a rule specifically in there. It's like, if you have a bunch of mercs on your team and you don't really identify necessarily as a singular alliance, so like, it was primarily put there for the likes of MPSI groups. So if you like have... if you want to have Spectre Fleet, for example, you can have that. But if you happen to have a team that was largely filled with mercenaries and you wanted to rename it, that option is given to you. But it's very much a case of, we do stipulate in there saying, look, please use a bit of common sense when it comes to picking a name.
And so, yeah,
Okay.
that
So I think
imitation kind of question is a very, in the moment decision-making kind of thing.
I think that, what I'm kind of hearing from you all is that this is a command for people out there to go and really try and push the boundaries and find out exactly where they are the next time they get the opportunity. No? I mean, okay,
so
fair
E.
enough.
That's just what every E player does, isn't it? But there's the line, let's dance on it. It's just the norm.
That will be fun for the first couple of times, and then suddenly you will find that the line has moved on you. Probably is the likely response if you try it too much. The line will suddenly not be where you remembered it, and you will be going, "Oh, why am I not in this tournament?"
It's sort of a bit like please don't make us make rules, but if you make us make rules, we will make rules type deal, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So, I want to kind of, start looking at where a tournament and regular Tranquility PvP and balance start to cross over. And something that anybody who's watched, somebody who takes part in TQ and also watches or enjoys taking part in any of these tournaments will know, is that there's actually very little crossover between what people prefer to fly on Tranquility and how they would fit and pick their hulls for a tournament. But every year there always seem to be some tells as to things that are incredibly powerful and versatile on Tranquility. You will see a lot of in a tournament, and I think that one case in point that we saw a lot in this tournament is the Prophecy Navy issue. The Prophecy Navy issue, for anybody living under a rock, has a number of things going for it. Namely, it has an incredibly powerful hit point bonus and an incredibly powerful optimal range bonus, which gives it a measure of combat flexibility on Tranquility that is almost unmatched in the battle cruiser space. And that particular ship balanced over into the tournament as well. It was seen a lot, but people didn't seem to have a lot of trouble dealing with it. And they often dealt with it by just bringing their own Prophecy Navy issue. Do you have any? I mean, this is kind of for you, Zelus, really. Do people's choices in the tournament factor in much to the way that CCP thinks about the balance of the ships generally?
Yes, it does. More. Whilst what you're saying is absolutely true in terms of what you'd see on TQ in their particular use, doesn't particularly match what you may see on TD, just because of the restrictions, the particular format. You can't run away. You have to stay and fight. So it kind of changes a lot of the dynamics of the way the fight actually just works out. So it always provides a little bit of a challenge to me when, take it for example, when we added the new combat destroyers and the battle cruisers. It was like, how are we going to introduce these into the tournament? Or actually, the great example would be right now is the new Deathless ships. So this is the Charity Cup was the first tournament really that's had the Tholos available to it. And the AT is likely to be the first tournament that will have the Cenotaph available to it. And how they function in a tournament environment where you can't run away versus, well, not only that you can't run away, but you can't cloak, which also plays a part to it as well. Also factors into how it's pointed, right? So you have to just look at its overall strength. So when you take a Leshak as another great example, where it has a bunch of utility highs and a singular weapon, it's a very highly pointed ship because it has the extra utility that you're going to see in arena, but you don't really have so much for the opportunity to use it equally as well on TQ. So when it comes to figuring that out, then it comes down to me to look at it and go, hey, where should I point this? Sometimes I'll have previous tournaments to review. So for example, the Charity Cup, I'll probably look at how many times a particular ship was bought, how many times a particular ship was banned. The great thing is, again, about bans is it kind of works as an overall equalizing system. So if there is a couple of ships that seem a little bit off in the general points and everybody wants to bring them, invariably it's a choice if it becomes a pick ban. So you either ban it or you just bring it. So it kind of weighs it. It works itself out quite well. But yeah. Yeah, go on.
Once you finish your point.
Go on.
I was going to say, I can tell you that the Tholos was banned 61 times in this Charity Cup. That could be
out of how many matches in total where people were allowed to ban?
The total number of bans, not out of the total number of matches. I don't have that particular statistic.
Okay.
We've not gone too deep into it yet. But of a total ban number given of 773 bans, the Tholos was banned 61 times. So that kind of gives you an idea that at least some level of the time Zelus
People were
sees
scared
me.
of this ship. People are scared of this ship.
It tells you that for a certain amount of time, the Tholos was actually considered to be a concern. And I think Jita in Twitch chat has a fairly strong point in that the Tholos in itself, if you take away the Breacher Pod, the Tholos in itself as a ship is kind of meh, right? It's got half of one type of gun, half of another type of gun. It's middlingly fast, but it's not out there in the destroyer space in
There's none
the
of those
same
aspects
way.
of the point, really, are they?
Yeah, in this, you wouldn't pick a Tholos against a Jackdaw or the command destroyers, right? You wouldn't pick a Tholos against those ships if it didn't have the Breacher Pod. And so that's something that needs to be considered, to Zelus's balance point. I would say that those are definitely considerations. But to then follow on to the pick or ban moments, You then have, out of 773 total bans, the Sentinel as our topmost banned ship with its newts and its tracking disruptors at 122 total bans, and the Kerries with its damps at 85 total bans. So your top 3 ships, you are talking 200, probably close to, if not more than a third of the total bans issued are in 3 ships: the Sentinel, the Kerries, and the Tholos. So, like,
I was looking forward to these kind of stats.
This is where you get into the pick or ban moments, where if you're bringing a Kerries, you don't ban the Kerries, obviously. But if the Kerries goes unbanned in a match, and you don't bring it to get in on that damp warfare from the start, and that initial really early control in a match, you can definitely find yourself on the back foot if you don't ban it and don't bring it, because your opponents probably will, and they will probably control you out because of it.
Do you happen to have to hand what some of the most popular ships that ended up on the grid were?
Unfortunately, the comp analysis tab is a little incomplete, so I don't have the most used ships for this event. If we'd gone in and done some more comp analysis in the last week, like if this was Anger Games, I would guarantee you we'd have this. But Soth and I were kind of helping out here rather than the main drivers for it, and so there's some of that has kind of fallen off along the way in terms of our spreadsheeting and the way the spreadsheets work. I don't have any most used. Zelus has. There we go. Here we go.
You do?
Yes, I have usage.
Prof Navy's up there.
I have usage and survival rates, amount of times died, amount of times fielded, and amount of times banned.
Is that it? Are any of those pieces of information pieces you can give to us right now?
Yeah, I mean, the Magus was the most bought ships. It was.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Fielded 124 times. It died 69 times. And banned a whopping 3 times, so it has a survival rate of 44%. And sure enough, the Prof Navy issue was the second highest ship. 108 times it was fielded, 56 times it died.
Wow. Wow. Do you know which were the top battleships that were brought? Because obviously everybody brought a battleship to this one here because of the way the rules were laid out. What were the most used ones there? We've got some guesses. We've got Raven and Hype as guesses in there at the moment.
Hype was second. First was Abaddon.
Yeah.
Abaddon was fielded 63 times. It died 27 times.
Okay.
Hype was fielded 46 and died 17.
By
Remember we put these in our tier list?
Details. By the looks of the ban list I have, Abaddon Abaddon was banned 15 times. So
Correct, yeah.
really not a huge amount of bans overall in
Well, in theory, especially if you're allowed to bring if you're able to bring a Sentinel, the Abaddon is kind of very easy to neuter, isn't it?
Yeah. Those newts will start to hurt an Abaddon sort of after 2-3 minutes. If you can get them on early, it will hurt.
Yeah, and obviously the tracking disruptor to cut down like half of its purpose, which is flexible range on its damage. We recently did we did a tier list of all of the Tech 1 battleships, including Navy and Pirate as well. And we ended up the first one on our that we came to was the Baden, and we put it in the S tier. We were talking purely from a tranquility point of view, but like the Prophecy Navy issue, I'm guessing it's a ship that really just transcends both tournament and TQ play to be incredibly powerful.
I'd say that's a bit high for an Abaddon, right? Like I'd probably put that high B into low A tier if it were me ranking it. But I'd say you have a fair point, right? Like as Jita notes in the chat, it's a big stat stick, and large pulses are very strong. So
Yeah.
like, it's got to be up there
This is
all
fair.
the time.
It does a huge amount of damage, as well as having plenty of range and tank, but it doesn't really move anywhere.
Yeah, if you get a wrecking
It's
shot
just
on
a
somebody,
chunk
it's
of a
gonna
ship.
hurt.
Yes. And do you know what? I don't want to sort of try and rehash ground that we covered in the tier list there, but I will say again that the Abaddon is the most battleship-looking battleship that Eve has.
Oh, I might argue the Megathron with you there.
Oh, so close to my heart. I tell you what.
I will ask, where did our most banned battleship land in your tier list? Our most banned battleship being the Typhoon.
I don't have it to hand. Let me have a quick look. I can tell you in a minute, but while I search for it,
I got it, dude.
What I'm going to say is, Oh, you've got it. Are you going to put it up?
Yeah, you just talk. I'll answer the question.
Okay. We'll have that up on the screen on the stream in a second. But I think it's be a good idea to start talking about what you guys would hope for or what you see in the future for the Alliance tournament, but also tournaments like this that are almost entirely player volunteer run. That they go for a good cause. They've got all this effort put into it. They've got its own unique set of rules. Let's hope that there's a charity cup too, same time next year. Are there any sort of things that you've learned from this one here that you would want to change for next time?
I want to throw this one to Rose first, because I have a couple of things that I can talk about for moving forward in player tournaments. But I'll let Rose go, and then Zelus, and then I'll come in with the cricket bat.
Bonk.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
So you said player-run tournaments. Sorry,
listen. Any tournaments? Is there anything that you've learned from this one that you would like to see how it would be if it was slightly different next time?
I mean, honestly, forgive me. I have to tell a teenager off after this, and so I'm sitting here braining on, okay, do I go full Eve player or not? But really, I would love to see more newer players get in. I am very much a newer player advocate. I really absolutely would love to see more things open for new players, and having more tournaments that allow more access to players who may not be like familiar with it, or more not in big blocks, not in the big alliances, not in, but opening up kind of the, hey, this is a way to get your foot in the door, and if you're still interested, like being able to make it, I don't want to say very much friendly to all, because it's never going to be friendly to all, but making it friendly to more, and going, okay, well, we can, I don't want to say kind of dip your toe in. We're not going to jump you off the deep end, but just tournaments that are very much just, hey, newer, welcoming like this. And this is part of what I liked about it, and I really wish we would see more tournaments that were like the Charity Cup, that it was, it's not just like Tuskers and paper numbers and set it and goons and pan horde, but it's like high set groups that are, hey, we want to try this. We may not be the best, but we want to learn. So I love that, and I'd love to see more of that.
I think it would be great to have something available to younger players. Although I guess the key problem is that the very nature of any kind of competitive tournament is that the people with the experience will just eliminate every single sort of person who's trying to have a go, And
Smurfing is also a big concern there, right? Smurfing being using alternate characters to suggest you're a new player instead of just being your normal experienced player character.
I do wonder do wonder if before they went away, and just to voice my bias on this first of all ahead of it, I wasn't really a big fan of it, but the proving grounds were undoubtedly a brilliant opportunity, depending on the ship type of that event. Were undoubtedly a brilliant opportunity for especially younger players to go again and again and again in a more controlled environment.
I beg for matchmaking every day. I beg. Just put me with four
I would
random
absolutely
dudes.
love to see proving grounds. I would
5v5
absolutely love to see that.
You just
I mean,
That would be an
Quick, someone
option.
send Gustav this video. Quick.
I can definitely see, especially when it had the low end limitations on modules and ships. I can definitely see that the proving grounds are something very valuable to the less experienced community of EVE Online that we have essentially lost without them there. But
and I think if
somebody said 5v5s, who's got
Yes.
Veronica's number?
Good
I
old
mean,
Joe.
it's at this stage that I start to not really like the existence of proving grounds if it starts to give people opportunities for gang fights in EVE, because in my mind these people need to be out in real space doing that.
Yeah,
rather
fair,
than in
but
yeah.
if you're talking about tournament play, and before we swing back to what we would like to see more in player-run tournaments, if you're talking about tournament play is a very, very specific arena-based scenario, right? There is no possible equivalent on Tranquility that you can absolutely confirm. And this is fair for Tranquility, right? Don't get me wrong. I love Tranquility and the ability. I thought when, Pochven happened, or, those bits where you can't immediately as a player interrupt somebody else's play, that felt a bit off to me for player balance, and it still does to an extent. And I don't expect anyone to comment on it. But that bit where you then have this idea of a tournament which is 5v5 in a standardized environment. There is no equivalent to that on Tranquility. And so, yeah, when it comes to new players getting in, maybe the proving grounds for a 5v5 situation might be a small learning step.
I don't know. I
I
feel if there's 5 of you online, then that is plenty to
go roaming.
Start going to real space and hunt, even just hunting and blobbing individual targets.
The problem though is that if there's 5 of us online and there's 5 somebody else online, I have to go 80 to them. That's the problem.
Not always.
That's my trigger. This is my trigger phrase.
I got him.
The scrimmaging.
Got him.
The scrimmaging. Phantomite, you've been on a team this time around. You'll know that. How much time did you spend scrimmaging versus how much time did you spend in a match?
Oh,
an
good
actual
grief.
tournament match, right?
Good grief. I mean, it felt like I was trapped in some kind of infinity prison during during the scrimmaging.
So this is what I say to all of my new team members whenever we start an alliance tournament cycle, and I do open.
That's a lie from Puce in chat, by the way. But yes, go on.
Immediately called out.
The first thing that we do when we start the open recruitment cycle of an AT event, because we always bring in new blood for the AT, is, hey, look, this is what you can expect from us. This is what our practice schedule is going to look like. This is what you will expect in terms of number of matches in an hour. And we will normally go for 2 to 2.5 hours of scrims in a single session. Yeah. And you can expect fights every X cadence, right? Earlier on in the cycle, it's slower as we get people up to speed, and then down the line towards the actual AT, you can expect fights probably 4 to 5 in an hour, depending on how the time frames work. Like, matches run long, or if they go short, we will go very quickly. And that bit of, you will have guaranteed PvP, guaranteed, without going anywhere, for this many hours each of our practice days. the practice is the tournament. The actual tournament matches are just the stressful part at the end.
That's why a lot of people have warm-ups on the day of the actual tournament matches. They just it's
for sure.
it's just another match at that point.
To make sure they're
And-
in the zone, obviously.
You are ready to push. You're ready to push the right buttons and not burn out your gun, right? Yeah, I say absolutely nothing about having burned out my guns in an actual AT match last year. No, that wasn't me. That was somebody else.
Oh, we always get this every tournament where it's like, I remember there was one tournament where one guy bought a scythe with an undersized prop mod. We had one. We had one. I think this tournament where someone was supposed to bring a remote SIBO and just bought a regular SIBO. It's like,
yeah. Why is my remote SIBO not working in the middle of the match?
Whoops.
Speaking of SIBOs, by the way, Zelus, could you just pass on to the right people at CCP that you know we're up for new icons, but this one isn't the right art style. It's not the right art style for Eve for the new SIBO icon. But go on, sorry, yes,
it's not good.
Time and a place, boys. Time and a place.
No. This matters to us in the tournament scene because we're there looking at our modules, going
the entire Eve scene. But
like,
yeah,
but like when you're trying to do a quick check of your fit and does it all look right, and you're there going, that icon looks like a remote SIBO. That's close enough. It's fine, right? And nobody's there looking at every single pixel, and you. So yeah, it can get you at times. And Zelus, as he says,
to be fair, in just the last few weeks, a large number of icons have been subtly differentiated to make them to keep their charm, but make them be instantly pick-outable. And I do really appreciate that kind of an effort for whoever worked on that. That was great.
Yes.
Yeah, damage mods fuel is probably the recent one as well. All the different isotopes are now different colors.
Oh yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, the art team does know it, and they do know it's appreciated. So
good,
I think
good.
they'll continue to push on with those.
Lovely.
Just to bring this back to where we started before I,
Oh yeah.
managed to sidetrack
After you,
Dirk,
I do have.
Tell us, what have you got for player tournaments coming up soon that you would like to see?
I mean, I was going to go back a little bit to one of the earlier questions as well with regards to both timings on tournaments and player on tournaments themselves. Mm-hmm. So what Dirk was talking about earlier with regards to timings, yes, with player run tournaments, they have a habit of running, we've seen recently multiple arenas or super close matches, which does mean that as rows encountered, you don't have a huge amount of time to talk about, especially if it kind of runs to time, you don't really have a huge amount of time to talk about it. If it runs to overtime, you have basically zero time to talk about it. You literally go, there goes that match, and here comes the next match. So it doesn't really... When I'm like planning for the Alliance tournament, I deliberately make it like a 20-minute cadence between matches. So a 10-minute match, 5-minute overtime, which means that there's always going to be at least 5 minutes to talk between matches.
And arena.
And a single arena, yeah.
Oh my god.
I don't think, I mean, I'll never say never, but I don't think, at least in the immediate future, that I'll probably be ever running 2 arenas. Just because invariably what happens is you end up with an A and a B stream or an A and a B broadcast where you kind of have like all the focus happens on one and not on the other. And I just kind of hate to be the team in the other arena because you're not getting like everybody's full, like, not so much full attention, but nobody gets to see you. You could quite literally play a whole tournament and nobody gets to see you. Like,
it could be that the best match of the tournament happens there. Yeah. And it's not the same seeing it recorded later, being like, "Wow, check out this that happened earlier." It's like it's not
the same. You can't lose points on it.
But I suppose on the other hand, your problem is that you've got a lot to get through.
Yeah. So I was about to say this is the downside. So one of the first tournaments that I helped CCP out was Alliance tournament 17, where Aurora had done 15-minute matches, and I said like, I'm never ever going to do this again. Like, please don't, because it's the pressure that gets applied both to the referees and the team and the production team. It just becomes too much. sure, it makes the difference between the number of matches that you can have in a day, but it just becomes like really tough in terms of like you have no energy at the end of that broadcast from either a host or even as a referee, because the problem is if you're really kind of pushing constantly, the team gets annoyed at the referee because they're constantly at the door like asking for bans or like just like, hi, I'm here again. And the referee themselves gets like that mental fatigue that by the end of the day you hope that everything still goes the way it should, but invariably like I'm not putting it down to anyone in particular, but like we had it on one of the days where one team got brought into the arena and the other team didn't.
Yeah. And then
but it
they
was
had to be teleported back out, and then the match restarted. And
yeah,
delays.
Yeah, and then that's what I mean by it's just the mental fatigue of like if you're fresh and you're ready to go at the beginning of the day, you know your keen senses have kicked in, and you're much more likely to catch if something goes wrong. So yeah, invariably it does mean that there is only a limited number of matches that you can pull off per day when you're doing 20-minute turnarounds. But the idea is that everybody gets a relatively even amount of coverage and a fair amount of coverage. But it also means that everybody kind of keeps their wits about them across the course of the day. Now, talking about community tournaments, I love them in the sense that they're not the AT. And that sounds weird, but it is the reality of it. There's a lot of things that people can do in community tournaments that I won't do in the AT because, as you said earlier on, the AT kind of has like an established like format, the rough rules. We tweak them. We do every now and then we kind of do like a more overhaul of like some of the format or some of the points, but it stays relatively close to what it is. Because that's just what people have come to expect and realize. I don't want it to be that in 3 years' time, that team over there won the Special Alliance tournament that was different from all the other ones before it. Like it has a prestige associated with it of this is what you come to expect from the Alliance tournament. But that's not to say that in community tournaments, there isn't elements that I can't go, as you said, that was kind of cool. Let's see if we can incorporate this in the Alliance tournament. And that's what I actually super like about the community tournaments. The first tournament that I actually really got into, this will make you laugh, Eve NT had a tournament up in Nottingham where they had 2v2s. They had people literally were in the crowd and they just joined up with another person who was in the crowd and they had 2v2 scrims. And that was it. And it was just the most even, fair way of running a little tournament. But it was such a cool little thing to be able to do with, like, you could end up with someone who is, like, for example, Suetonia was routinely going to these meets. You could end up with Suetonia on your team and you're like, yeah, I'm going to win this tournament now. Or you could end up with someone who's literally in their first week of EVE. It's just literally luck of the draw. It's just literally luck of the draw. It happens. But I think it was one of the like kind of more fair ways, but it was also one of the great ways of getting people to actually play EVE for the first time and there to be no real stakes to it. Like, as you were saying, having a low stakes tournament in the sense of having be able to get rookies in would be absolutely fantastic. But like, you can't, because it is a free-to-play game, and because it is a case of anybody can enter, I could do background checks on literally everybody, but all I end up doing there is I present people the challenge of trying to circumvent that rule, is all that will end up happening. So it becomes a real challenge to try and organize like a rookies-only tournament. Ali was experimenting with a really cool idea of like, hey, if we run you almost like run a tournament within a tournament where you end up with a team that gets knocked out, or as teams get knocked out, they basically form another tournament as well, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. Yeah. The only thing there is, again, like, I'm not saying that it happens, or I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but there's nothing to stop somebody turning around and account sharing to try and circumvent the rules again.
You're
Because
just giving people ideas at this stage. You're doing the work for
Stop giving them ideas.
this, I mean, I say this because this is things that I've picked up on, and it's things that I have to really routinely check now. So it's also a case of like, it's there as a word of warning because it's just part and parcel of the regular check-in process these days. So it is a challenge to try and make a brand like impossible to get into tournament.
Well,
yeah, go.
Before we start to wind down for the evening, do you feel like there are any if you had unlimited resources, imaginary world that doesn't exist, right? Do you feel that there are any portions of all of this administration that has to happen before each match that could be automated away in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we've also been, we've been speaking in the community about as well. Like the most basic example I can give right now is like having a team management tool of some sort. This sounds really silly, but probably, I think it was not the last Alliance tournament, but the one before that, about 30% of people that entered a teammate's name was spelt incorrectly. So it was going back to the captain and saying, well, who is this dude? Like, you want somebody
over
on your
and
team?
over again.
I had that DM for 2 of my team members last AT.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's also a case of like, hey, I've been playing with this person for the last 8 years. I've always called them Davey 12,000 or Dave when I speak to him. I put his name on the roster. Why is he not on my team? And turns out the guy's name in game was like Charles the First, or like it's just like Game of Friends. You play with friends, you always call them as one thing. Doesn't mean that it's their name in game. And then they end up getting submitted wrong. So just like a team management tool, I think would be a really nice one. I think it's also really nice.
Client.
Yeah. But it's also nice, like if any of you have used Alliance Auth and you have like your fittings for your alliances in there as well, so it could also take it that step further, and you could do team management and put your fits in there, and then you could assign who's going to fly what on one particular comp. So you could start building comps out on there as well. Like there's a whole different like series of things you could do. One of the other ones is just having like brackets in game. I think would be good. Having some sort of fantasy league like idea of like, hey, can predict who's going to win throughout the tournament, what ships are going to be bought. There's so many different like little elements that you could introduce for tournaments. One of the ones I really would love, it's like it exists as an idea purely in my head, is like take an arena that you see today, but be able to replicate it and place it in space in a way that you would go to like a drive-through and you'd watch a movie. You go to a Dead Space site or go to a site and you see what's happening in that arena replicated in space. So you could you could rock up you could rock up to a location and just see people as the match is playing, but it's like in such a way that you can't interfere with the match, but you can actually see like the intricacies of the match. I think would be super cool.
That would be
awesome.
As if you were there. You can look at the ships. You can click on them and see their health and the E-War effects and things.
Exactly.
Like that. If you're bringing what you see on Twitch, but into the client.
I had an immediate response to that suggestion, and it was that maybe then people would shut up about the camera angles. But no,
I think the camera work is done really well. I mean, I think in some ways it feels like it would be a negative to lose the camera focus.
Right.
No,
so there's
pros and cons.
There's a very specific camera argument that happens every tournament, and I'll do my spiel about player-run tournaments potentially coming soon, TM, in a bit. Once we get towards the end, but every tournament and this comes back to a certain extent the production management of each tournament, right? Like we've talked a little bit about how the host and the stream producer during each mini break after a match will talk about what do we want to talk about and that kind of thing. But one of the things that the stream producer is doing be that myself for the Anger Games, or Brett Thomas Thomas, who's done it a few times, or Bayart J, or Jinton for the Charity Cup. You know, these are just the names that have done this in the last sort of little while that I'm throwing out here, but it is a small community. There is always a question about, are we doing the camera work ourselves? At which point we have to kind of show all of the action at once without trying to come too close or go too far away from different bits. So if some battleship is off in the middle of nowhere, we've got to kind of make an assessment, if we're the only camera person, about whether or not that battleship is going to make a micro jump move. And do we want to be watching that battleship at the corner of the screen, or do we want to just leave that battleship to be out in the arena and not on the shot and focus in on the brawl that's happening? So these are decisions that you make when you're the only camera person. And then if you are a producer with multiple cameras, you then have this distinction between probably a wide angle view and a close-in view that you have to figure out between. But we do not generally have multiple camera angles for one stream until we get to, you know, the final weekend, unless you're the CCP broadcast. Because the CCP broadcast has the resources to pull in more people and do things in a different way. So, you know, even if I have a second camera angle guy for the Anger Games, I am normally also doing a wide angle camera and trying to figure out what is the time to cut, where do I cut, how do I cut. So these kind of situations where somebody could just drive up to a visual representation of the arena in game kind of has me going, well, at that point, you could just focus on the ship that you want to focus on, right? You don't have to complain about me streaming a wide angle view on the live stream if you could just go in and say, hey, I want to look at that battleship that's out in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, being nothing, until he gets to a micro jump beacon. And that would be one of those things that is, I would expect, very, very technically challenging. But when you take some of the consistent complaints that we get time and again, and I'm telling you this as we have seen this every single tournament since before the hiatus even. Every single tournament, the camera angle questions come up because some people want to see the explosions, some people want to see the tactics, some people want to see a nice mix of both. And how do you make the balance work is a big question for the stream production kind of side of things. And we try, we do, but we invariably are always making a compromise.
I routinely have this every tournament. In the nicest way, I kind of just boil it down to two things. It's those on teams or those who are very Eve-centric and minded are more interested in tactical points of view. Those that I have no clue what they're looking at, when you join the stream and it's just a series of boxes moving around, they're not interested. Eve is not the greatest experience to look at. They want to see pretty explosions. That's literally what it comes down to. So the pretty shots, as you quite rightly say, the zoomed in shots, or seeing one person tackle another one, finding another one where it's closer, they look great, but they're also not interesting to those who are wondering what's going on the other side of the arena because there's two people having a one-on-one fight over there. And that is the challenge that you always encounter.
It's also not the best representation of the game because a lot of the game is playing in groups and seeing groups. And the one-on-one, yes, it does happen, but it's not the best representation of, you know, team versus team, corp versus corp, alliance versus alliance. It's not. Yeah.
I mean, when you start talking about the fights that we have world records for, every single one of them was streamed from a very zoomed out. Here is a blob of color. Approach, right?
Or multiple colors.
I am going to feel very good that Jita, who is a tournament veteran himself, likes the top-down camera that we have kind of premiered through the Anger Games. The fact that some people like that and it works, I'm so happy that we tried something and people want us to keep bringing it back. It's such a good feeling to have tried something a little bit new and it work out in some way.
I mean, that also comes back to, I think, one of the classic things that have stuck around for the last 10 years, which is the tournament UI.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
could also probably just do with a little bit of love in terms of, like, hey, if you want a top-down view, realistically, we should have a space on the overview for that. We should have a little space for, like, commentators or, like, while they're talking during the matches.
Discord overlays or something.
Yeah,
kind of
there's
thing. Yeah.
so many different little things that, whilst it was absolutely fine 10 years ago, things have kind of moved on a little bit today. So again, like, this was in an ideal world, would love to have. I mean, it's also an element of, like, having to go through a UI UX team as well. So it's not only just the fact of getting one, it's then understanding how people would look at it, where they'd look at it, then running tests to see where is the average viewer looking, and then refining what, there's lots of kind of research that would have to go behind stuff like that as well.
I will say it's been very interesting, Zelus, as we've talked to you. This is my segue back into the player run tournaments thing, but we've been talking to you a little bit about CCP code and the tournament tool and what might be available for different teams. Soth and I have talked to you about this a number of times over the years, but Alexander has been talking to you a little bit about it as well. And you found things with the UI that have been called things like awesome bars.
Yes, there's lots of things on the UI that we've just called bars over the years. So, like, when you have the tournament UI up and you have attack bars, defense bars, control bars, in the code they're just known as awesome bars. Like, it's just a weird little detail that's what the original programmer called them. They just called them awesome bars. Like the tournament UI that everybody sees, not everybody knows, it's called fancy UI, just because it's its own little fancy UI for tournaments.
It's a fancy thing in the game client that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Just has fancy paint.
If EVE players are a fan of anything in particular, it is layouts of data with nothing other than what is needed. And that might not be very appealing for new players. This might be the wrong word to use here, but I think that you'll understand. Ideally, you want to trick new players into thinking that the game is full of widgets and animations and things, because after you've got them, they don't want that anymore.
I mean, it's the beautiful thing about EVE is that realistically, you don't want to tell people that this game is spreadsheets in space before they start playing.
Because that's
but
what
once
they
they start
later.
playing, they will then suddenly become spreadsheet enjoyers.
It's information density and min-maxing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will feel very bad if we don't get to this whole bit of spiel that I have about upcoming player tournaments that are currently.
I tell you what. Why don't you give us that? What we'll
So,
do is we'll have a final words from everybody. So we'll give you your little bit here. You go ahead.
Here's my 5 minutes. First up, currently under investigation, under development, potentially not happening this year, but we'll see, is Alexander Churingen, who is a former AT captain, current AT captain. I don't know what he's doing with his team stuff, but he is trying to take the Captain's Cup format that we've just seen, the 6v6 format, and create a draft variant. So this is a pick, ban, or ban, pick format. This was an idea that was originally floated by Jintan and then couldn't make it work for time restraints, but Alex wants to have some fun with it. So we are over on the Anger Games server if you want to kind of join and talk about that a little bit. Beyond that, other stuff, there is the AT happening this summer sometimes. Alice is going to give us details soon, TM, hopefully. But there is potentially a conversation about a small player-run tournament to run alongside that for people who don't make it into the AT proper but still want to have some more matches. We'll we'll be waiting for AT details, but that is in the works, and Sothrasil and I are actively talking about it to run it so that we can make it at least reasonably decent comparative to the CCP broadcast. We would never say we are better than CCP, but we do at least try to
These small family-run
equal
tournaments.
them. These small tournaments that have more matches than yours, yes. Speaking of these small tournaments that generally have more matches than the AT, Anger Games 7 is officially confirmed. We are
And when
willing
will
to
that
go
be?
on record for early next year. We do not have specific dates yet, but we are not expecting any other major player-run tournaments to kind of interfere with the January to March, February to April-ish timeframe. We'd specifically said this year we weren't going to run an Anger Games because Jintan was running the Charity Cup, and we wanted to help him out with that. And then we've got the AT in the second part of the year. So we are definitely doing Anger Games 7 next year. You can expect us to start drafting rules sometime in December, and we will be opening the rules to the public, basically. We'll be opening it to public consultation. We will make the final decision, but there will be public consultation on rules. You will all get to have your opinions on whether or not control is good or bad, whether or not we should be allowing scripts or not. These will all be parts of the conversation, and also the points variations that we might make changes for, etc. So expect at least a couple of different player-run factors in the next little bit, and then Anger Games early next year. You will all be ready, and we will have on the Anger Games Discord server an announcement soon as well. Would you guys mind if I drop a quick link to the Anger Games server in your Twitch chat? Or
I don't know if you can, but you're more than welcome to try.
I will try. I need to accept the rules first. There we go. Hey, it works.
How about that?
And you didn't get auto-botted. Oh my god.
So there is the Anger Games server. Jump in there if you're interested in hearing more about Alex's drafting format. Jump in there if you are interested in Anger Games 7 next year. And in the meantime, wait for Zelus to tell us more at FanFest about Alliance Tournament.
And Rose, any final things that you want to say?
Other than it's been absolutely fun being a part of this. Oh gosh, so many words. There in such little time, what I would say is, look, I have the bug. I've been told by some of the behind the scenes people, you're one of us. Okay, well, and I'm just happy to be here. And if I get a chance to do any more of these, count me in. My time is how can I help? So I look really forward to seeing just helping, and if there's a need for a spare body, hey, I'm here, and I maybe kind of know what I'm doing. I don't know. That's a question that I ask myself every day. But but I'm just happy to be here.
To throw some quick props Rose's way, it is worth noting that before we went into our first day of broadcast, which was 4.5, maybe 5 hours worth of broadcast, so 6 hours worth of in the chair doing hosting from the pre-show to the after show. I did say I was kind of curious as to how Rose would hold up, because this is not, as we've talked about, this is not a chill thing. It's not a relaxed moment. You are constantly talking to the referees, talking to the cast. You are in matches, even when there is like a match going on and somebody else is talking, you're tracking what people are talking about to try and figure out where you're going to throw it to. It's 6 hours of non-stop work. And I did sort of go, Rose does not know what she's got herself into here. But you came through it incredibly well, and you did it for, I think, 4 full days of the Charity Cup.
Correct. It was like 4 full days and then 2 half days, and
Yeah.
just kind of a reference, I'm not even a year in game. So I'm over here just trying to go, okay, and keep my brain about me and be able to do this. And after the 4 full days, honestly, I went and took a nap because I said,
Yeah.
man, the amount of just straight work and piecing together of things, my brain was just dead.
It's information overload. It's a lot of brain
drain.
work rather than
Yeah.
a lot of physical work. And Rose did so well. This is what I was trying to say here. Is like she came in as a first time host and just muscled through, got everybody in the right places, talking about the right things. It went really well. So props to you, Rose, for coming in and doing that.
Well, thank you, Dirk. I appreciate it. It means a lot.
And Zelus, any final thoughts before we hand it over to Redline?
I mean, as Dirk has quite rightly pointed out, FanFest is coming up. There will be tournament stuff happening at FanFest. I'm looking forward to being able to talk about stuff after FanFest as well. As usual, it's always nice to have stuff on the agenda, but also like, hey, we announced the AT right at the start of the year this time in terms of where it was going to be, at least in the quarters this year. So I'm looking forward to, that is also coming up, but it's also an absolute bucket load of work that's associated with it in terms of getting everybody lined up. I think when I generated the staff list last year, I think it was 93 people. It was just shy of 100 people were involved from start to end of the tournament. I think even with the staff that we saw with in the Charity Cup, I wouldn't be surprised if I was to just pull the number out of the air that it was probably close to 40 people behind the scenes that was involved. Yeah. People don't really realize the number of things that need to come together and schedules that people need to agree to make these things happen. So I want to also give a massive shout out to like the Charity Cup, the organizers and the staff that were also involved, and of course the participants that all turned up, bar that one team that didn't. Yeah.
I think that's
there were actually 2, wasn't there?
Was it 2? I thought it was 1.
I thought it was 2. No, there was 2 crossed out on the list.
We haven't necessarily talked about that, but just to throw some real quick numbers, there were 51 teams signed up. There was 1 that didn't show up to any of their matches.
It was 53.
There was 1.
It was 53 originally, and then it got cut down to 51.
Yeah, it got cut down.
Uni
But
and one other group didn't show up.
But in terms of like the final numbers for what went into the feeders, the Charity Cup saw 51 teams, and as a rough average across the teams, there were 12 people per team. So that's 1,000 players. Slightly more than 1,000 players. Plus staff, plus the people that watched it. These are the scales that we're talking about when it comes to tournament organization. And this is just the player-run tournaments that are a 6v6. Never mind your 10v10 of the Alliance tournament, which has the same number of teams, but just more people overall. Right?
Yeah, huge rosters there as well as the number of stuff. The numbers get away very quickly.
I didn't want to jump in too much there, but I did just want to like cover just the sheer scale that we talk about.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about tournaments as a niche thing in EVE, and the niche thing is 1,000 people and 40 staff.
Or people giving up their weekends as well.
And more than the weekends as well.
Well, yeah, their evenings for their practices and scrims and run-throughs. Yeah. I mean, Rose obviously also did some analysis during the midweek as well. Like I say, it adds up very, very quickly.
Extra content outside of the actual live shows.
Yeah, just because the time.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. It's been really good. I'm going to hand over to Redline for his final closing on that one there. Although he looks pretty happy, so I guess that means he doesn't have any extra thoughts that you haven't already said.
No, I don't really.
If anybody is coming to FanFest, by the way, come and find us for a drink. And if you want to chat about tournaments, Stetille and I will be there. Some of our referees will be there. Some of our
I will be there on a
guys
t-shirt.
Rose is coming on a
I will be
on
there
a
as
Tamba
a
t-shirt.
T-shirt
Yeah.
that Timbre made. So if you see
Amazing.
Timbre
Let's go.
with a cat ear, little redhead on his shirt, that's me. Hi guys.
Yeah. Well, one of the days, Soth and I will make sure that we post the bar that we're at and just come and have a chat, and we'll like have some tournament fun.
Heard
And
it
then
here
we'll
first.
enjoy the round
Drinks
table.
are on Dirk at FanFest. You find him, he's buying. That's what he said. That's what I heard.
There you go. Something
Hey,
about make sure you spill your
This is
drink
what I
on
heard,
Dirk.
too.
But yeah.
I will need to come up with a catchphrase that I will buy somebody a drink for. I'll have to think about that.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, we don't have time to think about that. We've only got about like 30 more.
I'm not going to announce it
10,
here.
10 more seconds.
Not
I'll
right
announce
now.
it. I'll announce it over on our Ang Games server where people should
Oh,
be if
no,
they
you
want
know-
to be involved in future tournaments, right?
Yappy.
You know, I've got a good one. I've got a really good
All
one
right,
that I'm
we're
going to send to
rating-
you. That
We're rating another charity
away, guys.
stream, by the way.
Goodbye.
Oh,
In
good.
about 10 seconds, doing a St. Jude charity stream. So enjoy that, and we'll see
Very
you next
good
week.
cause. Donate.
And we'll see you guys next week.
They're already gone, buddy.